What would happen if you ate eggs for breakfast every single day for 6 months? Let's jump right in. First thing that you might notice, it's kind of something you wouldn't directly notice, but you'd indirectly notice. Your insulin sensitivity would probably improve, meaning if you're dealing with some insulin resistance, you might see an improvement. And the reason I say this is it's kind of a twist. People look at eggs and they think cholesterol, saturated fat. This is kind of the first thing that's been ingrained in our brains. But 1/3 of the fats that are in eggs are monounsaturated fats. Most people think monounsaturated fats are going to be, oh, those are the heart healthy fats that are going to be in nuts and olive oil. And that's true, they are in those foods. But 1/3 of the fats in eggs are monounsaturated. And monounsaturated fats have been linked in multiple studies to improve insulin sensitivity, which means that, especially in the morning, this might potentially help glucose uptake throughout the rest of the day. Now, this is something you probably wouldn't directly notice unless you were paying attention to it, but it's important to note it because I think it's one of the biggest pieces as we get older. Now, the next thing that you'd notice almost immediately, and you've probably noticed this before, is that you're less hungry throughout the course of the day. But after about 5, 6, 7 days, you'll start noticing a pretty dramatic difference in your hunger throughout the course of the day. And a lot of times people, after about a week of eating eggs for breakfast without a bunch of carbohydrates added to the mix, they start losing weight. And they really don't feel like they're doing a whole lot different. Now, I'm not saying that eggs are magically making you lose weight. There is a reason behind this, okay? And if we look at the data, it's really intriguing. It's better to eat calorically dense foods in the morning. And we look at eggs and we think, wow, these have a lot of fat, have a lot of calories. Well, they kind of do, but if you're having them in the morning, it works in line with your biological system much better. There was a cool study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology that compared subjects that ate a high-calorie breakfast and a low-calorie dinner, and then they had them switch and do a low-calorie breakfast and a high-calorie dinner. Okay, calories were matched between both groups, meaning they ate the same amount of total calories throughout the course of the day. They found that when subjects ate a large breakfast, their dietary induced thermogenesis, how many calories they burned from the food, was 2.5 times higher when they had more food in the morning compared to the evening, which means you're going to be more satiated, you're going to feel fuller, and your metabolic fire, so to speak, is going to be stoked a little bit more in the morning. Now, again, it's something you notice immediately, but it's something that might take a little bit more time to really reap the effects. That's why I say over the course of a couple of months. We also can get away with eating more fat in the morning, believe it or not. And it has to do with what are called circadian genes, which sounds kind of fancy, but basically it's genes that are associated with how our cells use fuel. And there was a cool study published in BMC Medical Genomics showed that when you have more fat in the morning, your body is more apt to burn it. When you have more fat in the evening, your body is more apt to store it. And it has to do, again, with what's called PER1 circadian clock genes that associate with this. Very intriguing stuff. So if you're gonna have eggs, it makes the most sense to have them in the morning. Now, what about your cholesterol? After 6 months, are you gonna see your cholesterol increase? Well, there's some interesting data. In fact, there was a study published in Nutrients that took a look at people eating 2 eggs for breakfast every morning compared to a packet of oatmeal every morning. Now, there's a lot of nuance in the pieces there, but the bottom line is that HDL and LDL cholesterol stayed the same between the groups. So you're probably not impacting your cholesterol positively or negatively. In fact, if you end up eating less because you had eggs in the morning, I would argue you'll probably impact cholesterol positively. Serum cholesterol, like what your cholesterol levels are in the body, are different from what you consume in the way of dietary cholesterol. There are also studies that demonstrate the more dietary cholesterol you eat, the less biosynthesis you have. Not meaning it lowers your cholesterol, but it means that your body produces less because it tries to find a balance. So by eating more cholesterol, you don't raise your blood cholesterol. By eating more cholesterol, you just downregulate how much you produce in the body and everything stays the same. Your body tries to find a balance. Higher levels of cholesterol are usually inactivity related, very bad diet related, not just fat intake, things like that, but also just genetics. It plays a big role. After about 3 or 4 weeks, you'll start to notice you recover better, but you might even notice that you're stronger and your muscle is a little bit more dense. Now, part of this is because you've lost weight. When you lose weight, your muscle appears more dense. It's less fluffy and soft. But we do have to factor in that eggs are the perfect protein. Now, when I say perfect protein, this is a little bit of a colloquial sort of anecdotal thing. Okay, but there is what is called a biological value score, and it's on a scale of 0 to 100. Okay, this is talking about protein and the amino acids in a specific protein or a specific food. In this case, eggs have a perfect score of 100. That means they have all the amino acids that you need, but they also have the perfect ratio of those 9 essential amino acids. So you think about it, those 9 essential amino acids, you could have any ratio of them. You could have a bunch of leucine and very little of everything else, but a perfect biological value score of 100 means that the ratios are right where they need to be in perfect harmony with the body. So as far as muscle protein synthesis is concerned, you might be better off with these eggs. Now the next thing you might notice is you have a little less bloating. But what's the whole idea behind this? Well, a lot of times when people are dealing with bloating issues, they're dealing with issues breaking down polysaccharides into disaccharides into monosaccharides, and those are starches. Now, I am not in any way, shape, or form saying you need to avoid carbohydrates. Okay, I consume carbohydrates when I'm not doing a lower carb diet. I'm not opposed to them, and I'm not opposed to people doing those kinds of diets. However, if you do suffer from bloating, almost, I would say 7 out of 10 people that I talk to deal with the bloating after the carbohydrates. And for whatever reason, it seems to be more impactful in the morning. So by kind of eliminating the carbs in the morning and saying, hey, I'm gonna have a higher fat eggs, maybe some steak and eggs for breakfast, suddenly the bloating just isn't really as much of an issue. And it's a pretty simple mechanical explanation is, well, you're not having this enzymatic issue here. I will suggest that if you're dealing with bloating, you might be a good candidate to take like a good quality probiotic and kind of help out your gut microbiome a little bit. No pressure, you don't have to do it. I just think those are the kinds of people that are good candidates for that. I put a link from my recommended one down below. It's called Seed, and that's a 15% off discount link. So you use that code, it'll save you 15% off. It's literally the only probiotic I recommend because candidly, I hate most probiotics because they're over-marketed hype, but I think they have a lot of interesting data. And Seed is on the forefront of the microbiome research, and this is a science channel, so I appreciate the heck out of that. So anyway, that link is right there at the top line of the description. And again, you use that code, it saves you 15% off. You take 1 to 2 capsules a day, you probably start to notice some improvement within a few days, realistically. So that link below. Okay, so this next one. After about 2 or 3 weeks, you're gonna feel your brain almost feeling entirely different. You're gonna feel sharper, you're gonna feel potentially less anxious, you're gonna feel just better, right? But even in the very short term, you might notice a little mental boost. And I noticed this personally, and I'm like, well, where's the research to back this up? What's potentially happening? Because that's what I do, I reverse engineer these things. Well, for the long-term piece, there's a study published in Nutritional Science that found that egg intake, subjects that had eggs for breakfast or ate eggs almost daily, had a slower decline in cognitive function. So there was less cognitive impairment. So we're in an age where we're really trying to be concerned with neurodegenerative conditions and staving off cognitive decline. So this study demonstrated that eggs play a longer term impact in that. But there's actually evidence that suggests that eggs have a short-term acute effect on our brain as well, which is really cool. There's a study published in Current Developments that took a look at subjects eating whole eggs, egg whites, egg yolks, yogurt, or fasting. Okay, they found that subjects that had the egg yolks had the highest improvement in their attention and their processing. That's huge. That's like executive function and their ability to focus. Biggest score with the yolks. Okay, and then the whole egg also had the biggest improvements in memory. Okay, so collectively between the whole egg and the yolk, we have the top scores in processing, attention, and memory. And this is happening acutely. So really cool stuff. Most of the evidence points to choline being the reason. Eggs are super rich in choline. Choline has been demonstrated to improve processing speed, but also in stroke victims, there's been a lot of evidence that consuming eggs and the choline that comes with the eggs could potentially help with restoring function, cognitive function, in the first 12 months after a stroke, so really helping people out. So there's something to be said about choline. Then we have lutein, which is largely associated with memory, and then we have tryptophan in eggs. It has a nice ratio of tryptophan, which can help stave off sort of that anxious feeling. So a calm brain is a fast brain. When you're anxious, you're not making good decisions. So having this higher level of tryptophan can increase serotonin levels, which actually staves off the effects of cortisol and stress on the brain. The next thing you'll notice is you're not really wanting to eat as much dinner. And even when you sit down to eat dinner, this is something that takes time. Like after about 2 or 3 months of eating eggs for breakfast, you start noticing, man, like if you're eating enough with breakfast, you're just not wanting to eat as much for dinner. Like, the idea behind eating a big dinner just doesn't sound as endearing. And it's kind of cool because if you look at people that eat like maybe Pop-Tarts and some cereal that's like not even that calorically dense, but just high sugar, and then they just like get a fair bit of volume, but not a lot of caloric density, they want to eat more at night. And studies have demonstrated this, not even necessarily with eggs specifically, but caloric density. The next thing they're going to notice is kind of a funny one. You're going to start saving some money. Now, what the heck is that all about? Well, when you look at the bang for the buck, nutritional value, protein content, caloric density with eggs, even if you're not getting the perfect egg, you're still getting a lot of that nutritional value. And I would argue that even a moderate quality, middle of the line scale egg is better than probably 90% of the breakfast foods that most of us are eating anyway. So you could go to your regular store, get a dozen eggs for $3 or $4 or whatever it is with inflation now, but still, you're going to start saving money if that becomes your breakfast. Think about it. $4 for a dozen eggs, you have 3 eggs. Maybe a dozen and a half a week, you're looking at like $6 for your breakfast for the week. I mean, come on, that's really not much money at all. Now, I want to give you a quick tip on how to shop for eggs really fast. Okay, if you're looking at eggs, the best ones that you can find are going to be organic pasture raised, both of them, organic pasture raised. That means they're legitimately free range on a pasture. Okay, next up is going to be regular free range or pasture, non-organic. Next up after that is going to be regular free range. Okay, if they're not, doesn't say pasture, a lot of times free range means they have the ability to go outside and roam, but it could just be like a 5-foot square area. Next in line is cage free. Cage free doesn't really mean a whole lot. And the bottom of the line means just the regular, grade A eggs, nothing crazy to them. So that gives you a little bit of a scale of what to pay attention to. Don't worry about omega enriched eggs. It doesn't really mean much because it's such a small amount of omegas to begin with. And I really wouldn't worry too much, but one of the things I would look for is try to avoid ones that have heavy amounts of soy, but almost all chickens are fed soy these days, so it's hard to avoid. As always, I'll see you tomorrow.